Hello, friends. Here we are going to explain a movie that is quite dark horror trailer and full of suspense. This story is about a Nosferatu, a devil who is more dangerous than Iman, who is willing to do anything for the love of a girl. Who is this girl? How is this half in Rito's eyes? Will Nash Shira to make her his own? Let's start the video of the delay, friends. The story begins in a dark house where a girl named Ellen was sad and worried. She was very lonely since childhood, and now loneliness became the reason for her sadness. She wanted to make her colorless, empty life happy in any way. She asked for a wish and forget someone with her. Now, whether it is spirit or guardian in jail. But then her wish is fulfilled, and someone gives a reply in a scary voice. An unknown person comes in front of Ellen and tells her that as he has come out of the darkness into human beings, and the only reason for this is the Ellen because he has called him, and from now on he is his only. Together they reach a different world where both the entity and Ellen are intimate, and then within a few minutes this entity takes on a monstrous form and attacks Ellen, which completely scares Ellen. And when it opens, she is lying on her bed, after which the story is shown a few hours later. It was the year 1838, where now Ellen Baring's life was full of color. She was married, and the name of her husband, Thomas, who loved Ellen very much, and Ellen was also living a happy life in Germany with her husband Thomas. Thomas was a real estate agent by profession. Thomas was worried about Ellen because Alan Thomas had nightmares every night, which disturbed Alan. Thomas decides to treat Alan, but he needs a lot of money. When Thomas goes to his job, his boss calls him Vastbag. He informs about the largest and most magnificent mansion built on the site, which he had been commissioned to sell, and the person who bought it was Count and Locke, who was his client to go to Transylvania to fix the deal. Thomas was going to get paid a decent amount anyway when the deal was done, so Thomas agrees to go to Tennessee. When Thomas comes home and tells Lynn about the business trip, she is not happy, because Ellen was afraid of being alone because of her nightmares. Ellen later reveals to Thomas a dream she had a few years ago in which she was married to death. As a result of which the rest of the people were killed, Alan thought that if Thomas got away from him, something bad would happen. But Thomas thought of the profit from the deal and left Ellen for a trip. But before leaving, Ellen is left at the home of a special friend who is quite rich. His name is Frederick, who happily takes Alan in. Frederick's wife is Anna, and they have 2 daughters with him. Ellen gets mixed up a lot. Ellen puts some of her hair in a locket and sends the locket off to see Thomas. Soon Thomas reaches his destination and a hotel to spend the night. Thomas decides to stop, and when he asks the people around him about the Count and the Locke, they all refuse to mention his name, and they also have a lot of rogue behavior with Thomas. At the hotel for a room is found. But here too a lady advises him not to go to the Count and Logue's house. Formas does not understand why everyone is so afraid of the Count and Logue. He hears some strange noises from outside and is shocked when he sees a sight outside because some people are a devotee when the deceased go to the cemetery and dig up a grave, and as soon as they hurt the body in it, it starts bleeding and it starts to convulse. Seems to be a dream, but soon comes to believe that everything that happened that night was reality. Thomas then goes to the Count and Logue's house to meet him, but on the way he notices that the whole town is sleeping. It is shadowed as if there is no one here. On the other side, Noah is shown, who is sitting in the middle of the candles, doing a tantra job, and the whole Negat was, in fact, the nose who had become a disciple of the Count and Locke. And he was asking him, after walking some distance, there is a horse-drawn carriage in front of Thomas, which was very quiet, but Thomas sat in it without thinking too much and reached the house of Count and Locke and met him. Here the viewers are only shown the shadow type of Count and Locke, but it looks and sounds very scary. Count and Locke quickly signs the deal, but these papers are in a different language. Later, the Count and Locke ask Thomas to have dinner, but during the meal, Thomas cuts his finger and starts bleeding. Seeing the blood, Locke behaves very strangely, which makes Thomas tremble with fear and such. The 30th night actually stops. The next morning, when Thomas opens his eyes, he sees 2 teeth marks on his chest, which look like someone drank his blood during the night. But who is it? Thomas also gets a little worried thinking about it. But then he sees a lot of rats here, which tells him his reason. Then the Count and Locke bring the document papers to Thomas and his signature for the deal. Asks, but Thomas cannot find these papers because they are written in a very different and difficult language, and people say that this is the language of my ancestors. The same badge Count and Locke notices on Thomas's locket, which Ellen gave him as a token. Count and Locke ask to see it, and Thomas also gives it, but he doesn't get it back after the deal is fixed, and Locke gives Thomas some gold coins. The eyes open, and Thomas doesn't understand that it was not all or the truth. When Thomas looks at his just, he sees 2 teeth again, and now this darkness has increased even more. Enough from scared, he tries to get out of here and checks the whole castle. While walking around, he also enters a secret chamber, where he sees the Count and Locke's big royal chair and a coffin. Thomas, as soon as he dares to open the casket, the ground slides under his feet because inside the coffin was the dead body of Count and Locke, which was in a very bad condition. That the Count and Locke are not human beings, but evil spirits. Therefore they attack him, but in the meantime, the Count and Locke wake up and take Thomas under their control and attack Thomas. After that, he takes the lock of Count and Locke Kalen in his hands and says some words. Amazingly, the words spoken by the Count and Love are also heard by Alan, and they are his. He begins to take control, while the Count and Locke begin to drink blood from Thomas, which worsens Thomas's condition. After some time, when Thomas's eyes open, he walks out of the castle and falls into the river. On the other hand, Alan is shown to be out of control, sleepwalking, having nightmares, and the mental condition of knowledge has deteriorated significantly, hence the name Friedrich Wilhelm. When the doctor is called, when he checks Alan, he also thinks that Ellen's blood pressure is not good, but then and when it gets too out of control, Wilhelm drugs her into unconsciousness. His hunger for eating raw meat was forcing him to hunt others, and his victims were mice, birds, and humans. Goes in a while, Thomas also wakes up and realizes from sleep that he is shadowed by the Count and Locke, and that his soul is also in his possession. But while in the church it was once safe, but the nuns tell him,